Raqs Thomas was Howard's CI back when she was 16, which was right around the time that she got pregnant with her son. Meanwhile, Howard has a teenage son, and he seems real interested in Kanan Stark. I think that Howard and Raqs Thomas slept together when she was underage, and Kanan Stark is his kid.
Now, it is fair to say, the problems just keep piling up for Raqs, and she best said it herself in episode 4.
It's not about moving product, it's about solving problems. Every day is a new problem that's gotta get solved. That's the job, that's the work, that's the hustle.
Every day is a new problem that's gotta get solved, and the latest problem she has is Detective Burke. Burke just won't leave this shit alone, and now she's pieced the puzzle together, albeit she doesn't have actual solid proof, and she doesn't know it was Kanan who shot Howard yet anyway. But when and if she does find out, that's when both Howard and Raqs will know they have no choice but to get rid of Burke. So in this video, we're gonna run through Burke's investigation from season 1 and how it's come to the revelation of Raqs being Howard's CI when she was 16. We're also gonna run through some of Raqs' past hidden moves, which include High Post, DEFCON, and Marvin, and how it ties to Raqs being a CI. And then we're gonna wrap things up with some theories and predictions as to how things could get worse with either D-Wiz's brother or Unique's brother Ronnie, which really would put the icing on the cake for Raqs' problems in season 2. Now, to paint the whole picture of this story of Raqs being a CI when she was 16, there was actually a clue in season 1. It was when Raqs gave up Unique's re-up.
Nah, I want to know everything. But why are you blessing me with this info?
I mean, you police, right? You police. I'm reporting a crime.
So these were two characters who showed they had a long history, and no doubt, they definitely worked together to get rid of many drug lords. But we need to take it back a little further with Detective Burke, who was introduced in season 1. And although we saw her in a bit part role, when we did see her, she showed she was someone who wasn't scared of the streets. She wanted to be in the thick of the action and create leads. But stopping her from doing so was her partner, Detective Howard.
I'm gonna need you to wait in the car.
Look, I didn't go through the academy and walk a beat for 3 fucking years to keep this car running for you.
So, from the very beginning of season 1, Burke and Howard have seen the streets differently, and that stems from Howard actually being someone who grew up in the streets and knowing what happens if you get too close to the truth. In other words, Howard was actually protecting Burke because the less she knew, the better. But we also found out how he worked undercover between 1974 and 76, and so he knows the street game and code, but Burke didn't. So even though Burke's intentions are pure, which is to clean up the streets of Southside and to get to the bottom of various drive-bys and death, she doesn't understand the players and risk. Although she did see what was happening with the death of 2 young ones, Buck 20 and D-Wiz. But this didn't stop Burke, as I mentioned before. She was determined.
And you're a veteran and you act like you know what you're doing, but we got nothing. And now the captain is threatening our jobs, and I'm not gonna let you fuck up my shot.
But this determination has turned into borderline obsession in season 2, even though Detective Howard has warned Burke to leave this shit alone more than once. So when her partner was shot at the end of season 1, this is what gave Burke even more drive, because I'm sure she wants to be known as the one who solved the mystery of the Howard shooting and putting the cuffs on the guy who shot a cop. But she is in way deeper with this investigation. Not only is she investigating the shooting of a cop, she's investigating the cop. And not only has she been warned by Howard, she's been warned by her father, and she's been warned by Howard's ex-partner, who happens to be her ex-girlfriend, who she rekindled with. But despite the warnings from Howard, Patrick, and Adina, she started spying on Howard, and her major breakthrough came through Andrea. Andrea was Howard's escort who he'd been sleeping with for years, and he slipped up when he told her he had a son. So when Burke brought her in for questioning, she was able to get this new piece of information that just kept her hunger and desire to solve the case. Now the piece of the information led her to looking into Howard's history even further, because in episode 1, what did Shannon Burke see on Howard's desk? The folder of Kanan Stark. And throughout season 1, Burke questioned Howard, "What is it with you and that family?" But at the time Howard had an answer for everything, because he's a pretty good damn chess player himself. Now, sometimes the key to getting something you want is a favor for a favor, and more often than not, if you offer to scratch someone else's back, they'll scratch yours, and this is how Burke managed to get the biggest information to date. She used her connection that she had with her father to get access to Howard's file, and then she returned to do this officer a favor, but in exchange for access to Howard's mystery file between 1974 and 76. and so she came across the information. Howard was an undercover agent who had many CIs, including a 17-year-old female, but Raqs was 16, who told Howard she was 17.
This from the undercover who pushed up on me when I was 16 years old.
You said you were 17.
And Burke got it spot on. Raqs was Howard's CI, in other words, a snitch, which was also new information for us, because to this day, we just thought her and Howard were sleeping together. So this brings me on to some of Raqs' power plays. We know High Post was burned alive for being a snitch, which was revealed to us in a flashback at the beginning of season 1. But it now makes sense. High Post wasn't the snitch, Raqs probably was, and High Post just got the blame, maybe set up by both Howard and Raqs, and maybe they also worked together to move DEFCON out the way. Because if we've learned one thing about Raqs, she's power hungry, and like I said before, it's a favor for a favor, and there are several clues that have been dropped over the past season or so which are open to interpretation, but in my opinion, Raqs has made even more moves away from DEFCON and High Post. For example, moving Marvin out the way to take over, and I really do wonder what's gonna happen when the family find out she was a CI. Now, coming back to Detective Burke, something which has been a common theme across the Power universe when it comes to law enforcement. It's one thing knowing the truth, but it's a complete different ballgame trying to prove it. In Power, we saw how good Ghost and Tommy were at hiding in plain sight, and even though they were arrested at one point, they were still able to elude law enforcement. So it is safe to say, Detective Burke has a work cut out, because rarely do we see anybody being locked up in Power for their crimes, although there are a few exceptions, but more have evaded the orange jumpsuit. But something definitely has to give before the season is over with Burke, because she's getting too close to the truth, and in episode 8, she has her eyes set firmly on Raqs, so is time ticking for Burke, and is she digging her own grave? Now let's move on to some theories, because Burke is just one problem for Raqs, Kanan is another, and so are the Italians and Unique, but I do expect her to solve some. But then again, just like she said, when you solve one problem, another one arises. And so by the end of the season, I think we're gonna see either D-Wiz's brother coming home to roost, or at least another new character just to fully shake things up when Raqs thinks she's got some level of control back. But the reason why I think it could be D-Wiz's brother is because Kanan's slipping away, and there really is nobody better than Kanan's best friend's brother just to push him further, because after all, he's already seeing through Raqs' lies. We just need him to open up the envelope, and then it really is game over, or at least her relationship with Kanan. I also went through a list of unknown characters who could possibly appear at any given time, but one character I forgot was Ronnie, who's Unique's brother.
Your brother would have never done shit like that.
Yeah, maybe not. You see, Ronnie's upstate for the rest of his natural life.
So along with D-Wiz, Ronnie is someone who, even though he is in prison, we could see a visit from Unique, or in typical Power fashion, they could find a way where he could be released on a technicality. So I do expect there to be a huge problem for Raqs, just to make things worse in terms of both her street game and personal. But again, many of these problems are really self-inflicted, because she had too much trust in Howard, just like Ghost had in Kanan in Power. It really is no coincidence after the death of Roller and Scrappy, we've seen a turn in fortunes for both characters of Ghost and Raqs. But that's a breakdown of Raqs' Detective Burke problem and a background as to how the clues were there from day one about Raqs being Howard's CI when she was 16. But how does Raqs tackle this Detective Burke problem? Because there is only one way, because Burke won't stop. So drop all your thoughts down below on all things Raqs, Howard, and Detective Burke. And of course, if you are new to the channel and you haven't done so already, then remember to smash the subscribe button if you want to see everything Power Book 3 and Power Universe related. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.